Hey folks, welcome back. It's Martin with Good If It's Wood. Today I'm going to be replacing my old Redwood mailbox post that has been destroyed by wood boring bees with a new, more modern looking cedar faced mailbox post. So let's get into it. Alright, so as you can see, I'm starting out with just a basic mailbox post. You could buy one pre-made, or you can buy the 4x4 lumber and make it yourself. I definitely went ahead and bought the lumber and made it myself because the cost was significantly cheaper going that route. Bought an extra 4x4 post and use that as the support that you see me working on right now. It goes from the ground level on the main vertical piece and attaches to the end of the main horizontal piece that the mailbox will eventually sit on. Okay, so what you see me doing here is laying out the curve that I wanted to have for that front facing piece. I didn't want it to just be flat. I wanted it to have a little more character to it. So I used a couple of finishing nails, tacked them in, and then used those to hold my aluminum yardstick in place and drew on my curved line there, using that as a guide. And now you'll see me head on over to the bandsaw to cut that out. Alright, so here we are back from the bandsaw. You'll see I've gone ahead and screwed that front piece back to the actual mailbox post. You may be able to see a little bit of an overhang there at the top. I cut this brace and then let it sit overnight and came back to find that it had twisted. So it didn't quite fit back together the way it was originally. So you'll see me here just kind of cleaning up some of those joints with hand plane and pull saw. One thing I like to kind of demonstrate on my channel here is that while it may be nice to have the latest and greatest and most expensive tools, it's definitely not required. Most of what I have is cheaper stuff that you can pick up at your local box store. The hand plane I'm using here is a cobalt hand plane that I picked up at Lowe's. Pretty sure it was probably $50 or $60 versus a couple $100 for a better quality one, but in all reality the adjustments are pretty good on this. As long as you sharpen the blade well, it is a pretty good little tool to have, and it saves you quite a bit of money. You may also notice here that the pull saw I'm using is also made by Cobalt, and the sander is a Harbor Freight Hercules sander, and both of them serve me quite well. Here what you'll see is me using some 40 grit sandpaper to just clean up the rough edge left by the bandsaw and refine that shape a little bit more. And then I'm moving on to the chop saw to cut down some cedar fence pickets, and now heading over to the table saw here, cutting that down to the same width as our 4x4 post, so 3.5 inches. That's going to end up being the piece that I'm going to put on that curved front section. I wanted to hide the treated lumber and have everything be faced in cedar. So I went ahead and cut that piece down to 3.5 inches to match the 4x4 post. I planed it down to about 1/4 of an inch, soaked it in hot water for about an hour, and now you'll see me here clamping it to the face where I'm going to have it attached eventually, and just gently bending it so that it matches the curve there. I'll clamp it in place and left it about 4 hours if I'm not mistaken, and then once it had adhered or conformed to that curve completely, I was able to pull it off, and you'll see me gluing it back down permanently here in the upcoming segment. I will say this was a bit of a learning process. I've dabbled in wood bending here and there in the past, but this was my first time doing anything like this. I did try to bend one plank without planing it down and just leaving it at full thickness, and I got it about 90% of the way around that curve, and it finally split. So I planed it down to about 1/2 an inch and tried again, and it still split, and ended up just going ahead and going down to 1/4 inch. In the end, I ended up doing 2 of those, so I got a nice 1/2 inch thick face on the front of that piece there. And here you'll see I've already glued the bottom section on. I didn't record that, but now that that's had chance to allow the glue to set up, I came back and pull off the clamps, added some glue underneath that upper section, and then I'm going to clamp that into place and let it set up as well. So now that I have it sitting sort of upright, you can get a better idea of the profile and that curve. I think it looks far better with that little bit of a curve than it would if it was just a straight board running from that ground level up to the upper support. So I'm glad I took the time to add that little bit of a curve to it. It ended up looking extremely nice in the end. Okay, so here I'm just bringing my cedar fence pickets over and laying those in place where I want them to be, clamping them so they don't move on me while I'm tracing my outlines, and then just using a pencil to trace that curve on the front and along the top edges. I'll then take that over to the bandsaw, cut that out, and continue on in the same manner with the remaining boards for that, what will end up being the side of the finished post. Right here, you'll see me adding a little bit of a chamfer to the edge of this board. I did apparently lose some video of me doing the others, but I did the same thing to all of them, and you can kind of see the white lines there in this clip, which are kind of showing where those little chamfers are. Just added a little bit more of a neat little touch to it in the end, I think. As we continue on in this clip, you'll see I'm screwing my fence picket pieces to the main body of the post. I'm just using some trim head screws here. They have a nice small head, so they're not as noticeable, especially since you're really not going to be up close on this. It's more just something you see from the road as you're passing by. You'll notice also the little curved piece I'm screwing on right now. I kind of goofed in the earlier segment where I was laying this out, so I ended up going back and redoing that and cutting it off camera. I like the look of it much better with the curve than the way that I had previously gone about it, so looks good. All sanded now, just gave it a quick sanding with 120, I believe, just to take all those little fuzzies off that you usually get with cedar fence pickets. And here you'll see I'm just taking a scrap piece of 4x4 post and cutting it down the center to give myself 4 little corner pieces. When I went to put my new mailbox post in the ground, I decided that I wanted to go ahead and add a planter to the base of it and put some flowers there to spruce things up a little bit more. So this was a last minute addition. The whole process took me about 30 minutes to throw this together. It's not anything special, but I figured I would go ahead and include it since you'll be able to see the end result in the final pictures. Okay, so you'll notice here as I'm throwing this together, I wanted to maximize materials as much as possible. This ended up being, the planter box ended up being 3 foot by 3 foot. It would have been a couple inches shorter if I'd cut off those dog ears. I'm not really super concerned about those dog ears being there. It's such a small detail. Like I said, when somebody's driving by, I doubt seriously that most folks would notice such a small detail from a distance. So I opted to go ahead and just leave the dog ears there and get my full 3 foot by 3 foot planter box in the end. Alright, so here you get a sneak peek of the mailbox while I'm working on leveling out my planter box. Once I got it leveled, I just took one of my boards that you see me cutting here and laid it up against it, and used a pencil to mark that line so I knew exactly where to cut my bottom piece. And then you'll see me just going ahead and attaching those bottom pieces here. And then once I take it back out, I'm able to just flip it over, and the triangular shaped pieces there will match the slope of the ground where I'm placing it, and allow the box to remain level. In hindsight, as I'm watching this video while editing, I will say that the taking the slope of the ground into consideration was not something I considered at first. If I were to make one of these again, I would definitely figure out the slope or cut those corner pieces longer than needed, so that I could cut them down to size and they would be long enough to help stabilize the corners. As you can see right there, they do not reach all the way up. The original planter box, which was 10 inches, I believe, originally. So then with that angled piece added on there, that added another 4 inches-ish. Had I thought about that ahead of time, I could have made sure that my corner braces were a little bit longer, so that it would make sure those corners are supported better long term. So you'll also notice in a minute here that I ended up reducing the height from the original 10 inches down to just a single plank, 5.5 plus that 4, so about 9.5 inches overall. In the back, 5.5 inches at the front. In the end, this height just worked better for my purposes, so I'm pleased with how it turned out. Okay, so as I finish things up here, I just wanted to take a minute to touch on the cost of everything. As far as the planter box goes, because I was using mostly scrap that I had left over from the actual mailbox post, the only thing I really had to pay for was 2 fence pickets, which as of right now are about $4 a piece. I was able to cut those in half to make up the 4 sides. So 2 fence pickets, and then the rest is scrap. Pretty cheap, $8 to make that planter box. The mailbox post itself in total at today's prices at the time of recording was just under $80. So pretty affordable in my opinion, for a project that brings a huge improvement over just your standard run-of-the-mill mailbox post. So that's it, folks. I really hope you found value in this video. If you did, I would appreciate if you would like it, maybe subscribe and leave some comments. All those things help the algorithm find me and know that I'm providing you valuable content. So very much appreciate if you would do those things for me. Thanks, and have a great day.